Imagine walking through the magnificent halls of the Vatican, where ancient art, priceless relics, and centuries of history coexist. But behind those grand walls, what secrets are being kept hidden? Secrets that could rewrite everything we know about the history of the world, religion, and power. Welcome to the enigma of the Vatican, a place that has for centuries guarded some of the most terrifying and mind-boggling mysteries of all time. But what if I told you that the Vatican is not just a center of faith? It is a vault filled with secrets, conspiracies, and truths that have been locked away, awaiting discovery. You see, the Vatican does not just protect its spiritual legacy. It shields a history that could change everything you think you know about Christianity, politics, and human civilization. The Vatican is not just a religious landmark. It is a place that holds the keys to some of history's most astonishing mysteries. And today, we are going to explore just a few of them, from lost documents that could have altered the course of history, to secret societies operating under the radar. The Vatican's hidden vaults hold a treasure trove of secrets waiting to be uncovered. This is your opportunity to glimpse behind the curtain of one of the world's most powerful institutions. Before we start uncovering these long-held secrets, do not forget to like and subscribe. Doing so will unlock incredible luck for you. Trust me, you will want to stick around for what comes next. King Henry VIII's divorce, a decision that changed Europe. Let us start with a story that might sound familiar but has a twist that could make you rethink everything about how religion and politics intertwine. In 1530, King Henry VIII of England was facing a dilemma that would not only change the course of England's history, but would also fracture Christianity in Europe for centuries. Henry had been married to Catherine of Aragon for many years, but the marriage was not producing a male heir. And as you might imagine, that was a serious issue for a king who feared the survival of his dynasty. Henry's desire for a son was not just about personal preference. It was a matter of national importance. Without a male heir, the Tudor dynasty was at risk of being overturned, and Henry's rule might be jeopardized. So, he made a decision that shook the very foundations of the Catholic Church. He sought a divorce from Catherine. But there was one problem. The Catholic Church did not allow divorce. Henry, desperate to secure his legacy, reached out to Pope Clement VII, pleading for permission to annul his marriage. His request, however, was rejected. The Pope refused, likely because he was under the pressure of Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, who had a vested interest in keeping the marriage intact. And Henry's response to this rejection was nothing short of radical. He broke away from the Catholic Church altogether and established the Church of England, declaring himself the supreme leader. Now, this might sound like a personal issue, but this decision had a ripple effect across Europe, splitting the Catholic Church into two opposing factions, Catholicism and Protestantism. What followed was a series of bloody religious wars that would last for centuries. But here's the part that most people do not know. Henry's letter of divorce, this crucial document that triggered a religious revolution, was lost for centuries in the Vatican archives. In the 1920s, researchers stumbled upon this letter, buried among thousands of other documents. Can you imagine? A single letter that could have rewritten the history of the Western world had remained hidden for so long, locked away in the Vatican's secret archives. It is as if history itself was deliberately obscured. How many other pieces of history are still buried deep within these walls? This document, now uncovered, serves as a powerful reminder of how even the smallest actions, like sending a letter, can send shockwaves through the world, altering the very fabric of society. It begs the question, what else has the Vatican kept hidden from us? What else could change our understanding of history if it were revealed? African popes, the untold chapter of Christianity. Now, let us shift gears a bit. We all know that Christianity is often associated with Europe and the Western world, but there is an aspect of its history that is rarely discussed: the role of African popes in the early church. Yes, you heard that right there. Were at least 3 popes of African descent, and their contributions are nothing short of groundbreaking. Let us begin with Saint Victor I, the 14th Pope of the Church, who reigned from 189 to 199 AD. During his papacy, Saint Victor made an important decision that would have lasting effects on the Christian calendar. He decreed that Easter should be observed on a Sunday instead of a variable date. This might seem like a minor detail, but it helped unify Christian observance across the globe, creating a sense of cohesion and continuity in the faith. St. Victor's decision was a step toward the global church that we know today. Then, we have St. Miltiades, Pope from 311 to 314 AD. This was a critical time in Christian history, as it came just after Emperor Constantine's Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity in the Roman Empire. St. Miltiades led the church during a time of transformation, and under his leadership the church began using Latin in its masses instead of Greek, making it more accessible to the Roman people. This decision helped spread Christianity far beyond the Middle East and laid the groundwork for the growth of Western Catholicism. Finally, there was St. Gelasius I, Pope from 492 to 496 AD. St. Gelasius is perhaps best known for his reforms in church rituals and his dedication to charity. He worked to purify the church from lingering pagan influences and advocated for the church to use its wealth to care for the poor and oppressed. His actions were a testament to the idea that true faith is not just about spiritual rituals, but also about compassion and charity. What is fascinating about these three popes is that they all came from North Africa, a region that was once a thriving center of culture and learning in the Roman Empire. In a time when skin color could easily define one's place in society, these men proved that wisdom, faith, and leadership were not confined to Europe. Their legacies remind us that the story of Christianity is not a European story alone. It is a global one, enriched by voices from all corners of the world. Their stories also challenge us to reconsider what we know about history. How often do we overlook the contributions of non-Europeans to major global movements? How many more untold stories are there, waiting to be uncovered? It is a reminder that the history we know is often incomplete, and it is worth questioning whose voices have been silenced or erased over the centuries. The Knights Templar, heresy, power, and betrayal. When you hear the name Knights Templar, what comes to mind? You might picture medieval warriors in shining armor, guarding treasures and secrets. But the reality of the Templar story is far darker, filled with betrayal, injustice, and tragic loss. Founded in the early 12th century, the Knights Templar were initially a religious and military order charged with protecting pilgrims, traveling to the Holy Land. But as their influence and wealth grew, they became a powerful force in European politics. By the early 14th century, the Templars had amassed significant power and resources, much to the concern of King Philip IV of France. Fearing their strength, Philip took drastic action. He accused the Templars of heresy, and with the support of Pope Clement V, he orchestrated their mass arrest. What followed was a series of show trials in which the knights were forced to confess to crimes they had not committed, often under duress and torture. Many of the Templar leaders were executed, some burned alive in public, their names dragged through the mud. But here's where things take a shocking turn. Nearly 700 years later, in the early 20th century, the Vatican revealed a document known as the Paraminum Chinon. This document, hidden for centuries, showed that Pope Clement V had actually absolved the Templars of heresy during a private session. In other words, they had been falsely accused, yet the Vatican had kept this information under wraps. The Knights Templars story is not just a tale of betrayal. It is a stark reminder of the clash between religion and politics. It is a symbol of how power can corrupt and how the truth can be distorted by those in control. The mystery surrounding the Templars and their tragic fall still haunts us today, raising questions about justice, truth, and the lengths people will go to for power. What is even more unsettling is the possibility that the Vatican, the institution that should have protected the Templars, played a role in their persecution. How many other injustices have been covered up over the centuries? How many other stories of the powerless have been lost to history? The Vatican's secret army of exorcists. Now, let us dive into one of the more chilling secrets that has slowly come to light in recent years: the Vatican's growing army of exorcists. For most people, the idea of exorcism seems like something straight out of horror movies. But in reality, the Vatican has been quietly preparing a group of priests to combat what they believe to be the rising tide of demonic possession. The Vatican has even established an official training academy to prepare priests for this ancient ritual. The course, known as Exorcism and the Prayer of Liberation, has been held annually since 2005, And every year, more than 100 priests from over 50 countries make their way to Rome to learn how to confront evil. This is not just about learning prayers and rituals. It is about equipping priests to deal with what the Vatican believes is a real, growing phenomenon: possessions. The increase in exorcisms is staggering. In Italy alone, it is estimated that as many as 500,000 people seek out exorcism services each year, desperate to rid themselves of what they believe are malevolent forces tormenting their souls. But what has led to such an explosion in demand? Is it a sign of declining faith in modern society? Or has something more sinister been at play? Some suggest that in today's world of social media and globalized culture, fear and superstition are more easily spread. With many people turning to the supernatural for answers, it seems that exorcisms have become more relevant than ever before. Could it be that modern life, with all its uncertainties and anxieties, has driven people to seek out mystical solutions? What is even more fascinating and perhaps unnerving is the Vatican's response. The Church has made it clear that it is not just passively acknowledging this phenomenon, but actively expanding its army of exorcists. Each year, new priests are recruited, trained, and prepared to confront what many might dismiss as superstition. They are taught everything from traditional exorcism rituals to modern psychological techniques in order to handle these cases effectively. Whether you believe in the reality of demonic possession or not, there is no denying that the Vatican has embraced this ancient practice, preparing a new generation of priests to battle against what they perceive as the forces of darkness. It makes you wonder, why is the Vatican investing so heavily in this spiritual warfare, and what exactly are they preparing for? The Vatican's secret court, the Apostolic Penitentiary. As if an army of exorcists was not enough to suggest that there are powerful forces at play behind the Vatican's doors, let us turn our attention to another mysterious institution hidden within its walls: the Apostolic Penitentiary. This court is one of the most secretive and rarely discussed entities in the Vatican, and it deals with some of the most serious and unforgivable sins in the Catholic Church. Established over 800 years ago, the Apostolic Penitentiary's sole purpose is to grant absolution for sins that are considered too severe for ordinary church courts to handle. These sins are often so grave that they might even be deemed unforgivable by others. For example, crimes like desecrating the Eucharist or violating the secrecy of confession are brought before this secret court, where only the Pope has the authority to issue absolution. For centuries, the court's workings were kept entirely secret, with all records stored safely in the Vatican archives. The public knew little about the inner workings of this institution, and only in recent years has a small part of its information been revealed. While we now know that this court only handles a small number of cases each year, each case is often heartbreaking, complex, dealing with moral dilemmas, religious sacrilege, and scandal at the highest levels of the Church. The very existence of the Apostolic Penitentiary raises unsettling questions. What other secrets have been hidden behind the Vatican's doors? How many cases of immense moral complexity have been swept under the rug in the name of protecting the Church's reputation? The Vatican's stance on unforgivable sins and the fact that only the Pope can forgive them suggests a powerful institution with absolute control over moral decisions and the fate of individuals. What else might this court be concealing? The donation of Constantine, a forged document that changed history. The donation of Constantine is one of the most controversial and, frankly, shocking documents in Christian history. For centuries, it was believed to be an official decree from Emperor Constantine the Great, in which he supposedly granted the entire Western Roman Empire to the Pope as a token of gratitude for being healed of leprosy. This document, if genuine, would have given the Catholic Church supreme authority over both religious and political matters across Europe, an incredibly powerful claim. But there is a dark twist to this story. In the 15th century, a scholar named Lorenzo Valla used his knowledge of linguistics to expose the donation of Constantine as a forgery. He demonstrated that the language, terminology, and historical references in the document could not possibly have existed during Constantine's time, proving that the donation was a fabricated document created centuries later to give the Pope authority over vast territories in Europe. What is especially interesting and alarming about this discovery is how long the Church was able to use the document to legitimize its power. For centuries, the donation of Constantine was considered a cornerstone of the Catholic Church's claim to land and influence. It was not until Valla's linguistic analysis that the world learned the truth. The document was a hoax, The revelation of this forgery is a reminder of how easily history can be manipulated by those in power. How many other documents has the Vatican kept hidden? Documents that could alter the way we view religious history, politics, or power. What other pieces of evidence might exist, waiting to be uncovered? This story is not just about one forged document. It is a cautionary tale about ways institutions bend truth to serve their agendas. The Menorah, the lost treasure of the Jewish temple. Among the most enduring mysteries associated with the Vatican is the fate of the Menorah, the sacred seven-branched candelabrum used in the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. The Menorah was an emblem of the Jewish faith, and its gold structure was a symbol of both religious and political power. When the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 AD, they seized the Menorah, along with other priceless treasures. The candelabrum's fate has been the subject of speculation ever since. Some theories suggest that the Menorah was hidden away, perhaps underground, in order to protect it from invading forces. Others believe that it was moved to Carthage, or later taken to Byzantium. However, there is a particularly intriguing theory that suggests the Menorah was brought directly to Rome, and that it might still be housed in the Vatican's secret vaults. To this day, no one can say for certain where the Menorah is. There have been countless rumors and tantalizing accounts of people claiming to have glimpsed it within the Vatican's guarded chambers, but the Church has never officially confirmed or denied these rumors. Is it possible that the Vatican is sitting on one of the most sacred religious artifacts in history? And if so, what does that mean for the history of Judaism and Christianity alike? The Menorah is not just an object of religious significance. It is a symbol of the lost connection between Judaism and the Christian tradition. If it truly is hidden in the Vatican, it raises profound questions about the relationship between the Church and the Jewish people, as well as the power of the Vatican to control and curate religious history. The Secret Books of Moses, Ancient Powers and Forbidden Knowledge. The story of Moses is one that has captured the imagination of millions over the centuries. As the biblical leader who led the Israelites out of Egypt and across the Red Sea, Moses is a central figure in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But what if there were more to his story than what we find in the Bible? What if, after writing the first 5 books of the Bible, Moses left behind 2 additional books that contain knowledge far beyond anything the Bible reveals? For centuries, these secret books of Moses have been whispered about among occultists, mystics, and religious scholars. According to legend, these texts were passed down through a select group of people, chosen to carry the ancient knowledge contained within them. These books were said to hold immense spiritual and mystical powers, spells for controlling the elements, summoning angels, and even communicating with the dead. They were believed to be a guide to manipulating the forces of nature itself. In the 18th century, printed copies of the 6th and 7th books of Moses began circulating in Europe. They were quickly embraced by those interested in the occult, especially in mystical and magical practices. The books contained strange symbols, complex rituals, and diagrams designed to help the practitioner tap into supernatural forces. What makes these books especially intriguing is that they have been officially banned by the Vatican. The Church has never recognized them as part of the official canon of Scripture, and their forbidden status only adds to their mystique. It is said that the Vatican keeps the original versions of these books in its secret archives, possibly because of the dangerous powers they contain, powers that could challenge the very foundation of Christian doctrine. But what if the secret books of Moses are more than just mythical relics of ancient magic? What if they contain knowledge that the Vatican has kept hidden to preserve its authority? The very idea that such ancient and powerful knowledge exists somewhere in the Vatican's vaults raises unsettling questions about what the Church might be hiding and how much more is left to discover. The crucifixion conspiracy. Was Jesus saved? The story of Jesus' crucifixion is central to Christian theology. It is, after all, the event upon which Christianity's entire narrative hinges. Jesus died for the sins of humanity, and through his resurrection, believers are promised eternal life. But what if this story is not exactly what we have been told? There is a controversial theory that suggests that the crucifixion of Jesus was not a literal death, but rather a carefully orchestrated event. According to this theory, a hidden Vatican document reveals that Jesus did not actually die on the cross, but was instead saved by a powerful sedative administered to him during his final hours. The theory goes like this. As Jesus hung on the cross, a Roman soldier, possibly following a secret agreement with Jesus' disciples, offered him a sponge soaked in vinegar But this was no ordinary vinegar. It was laced with a powerful sedative designed to put Jesus into a death-like coma. After being taken down from the cross, Jesus was revived by his disciples, and what was later considered his resurrection was nothing more than his awakening from a deep, induced slumber. Could it be that the resurrection story is not a miraculous event, but rather the recovery of a man who was never truly dead? If this theory is true, it would shake the very foundations of Christian doctrine and raise questions about the true nature of Jesus' death and resurrection. How much of the Christian narrative has been shaped by centuries of tradition, and how much of it might have been fabricated to maintain power over millions of believers? The existence of a Vatican document that potentially reveals the truth behind the crucifixion would be one of the Church's most closely guarded secrets. If it ever came to light, it could lead to a complete re-evaluation of Christian beliefs and the history of the Church itself. The trial of Galileo, the battle between science and faith. In the 17th century, a momentous clash between science and religion took place within the very walls of the Vatican. It was a battle that would shape the course of human history and forever alter the way we view the relationship between science and faith. At the center of this storm was Galileo Galilei, one of history's greatest scientists and the father of modern astronomy. Galileo's crime was simple. He defended the heliocentric model of the solar system, the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around. This idea, which we now take for granted, was considered heretical by the Catholic Church at the time, which insisted on a geocentric view of the universe, one that placed Earth at the center of all creation. In 1633, Galileo was put on trial by the Inquisition, accused of heresy for advocating the heliocentric theory. Despite his groundbreaking scientific discoveries, Galileo was forced to recant his views, and the Church condemned him to house arrest for the rest of his life. For centuries, the trial and its records were kept secret in the Vatican archives. It was not until 1992, nearly 360 years later, that the Vatican formally acknowledged its mistake in condemning Galileo. This late apology was a small step toward healing the rift between science and religion, but the damage had already been done. Galileo, a man who had devoted his life to the pursuit of truth, was silenced by the very institution that should have championed intellectual discovery. The fact that the Vatican held the trial records in secret for so long raises critical questions about the Church's willingness to suppress knowledge that challenges its authority. How many other instances of intellectual suppression have taken place throughout history? How many revolutionary ideas have been stifled to preserve the power structures of the Vatican? The Galileo trial is a stark reminder of how deeply religious institutions have historically fought against scientific progress and how those in power have sought to control knowledge. The Vatican's silver hammer, a chilling death ritual. Among the many secrets of the Vatican, perhaps one of the most eerie is the ritual that takes place when a pope dies. You see, when a pope passes away, his death is not just confirmed by any doctor, it is confirmed by a very specific and haunting ritual that involves the use of a small silver hammer. The person responsible for this ritual is known as the Camerlengo, a senior cardinal who oversees the affairs of the Vatican during the period between papacies. In the event of a pope's death, the Camerlengo uses the silver hammer to tap the pope's forehead 3 times. If there is no response, the pope is considered officially dead. But the ritual does not end there. Once the Pope's death has been confirmed, the Camerlengo is also tasked with destroying the Pope's papal ring, symbolizing the end of his papacy. This strange and somewhat macabre ritual has been carried out for centuries, a solemn and bizarre act that marks the passing of one papacy and the beginning of another. Some speculate that the silver hammer is a symbol of both finality and tradition, an ancient practice that reinforces the power and authority of the Church. But there is something unsettling about the ritual's secrecy and the fact that it is performed in such an official, almost theatrical manner. Why has the Vatican chosen to keep this ritual hidden for so long? What does it say about the Church's grip on power and its deep-rooted traditions that can't be questioned or altered? The bejeweled skeletons, from martyrs to monuments. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the Catholic Church faced a period of intense internal and external pressure. The Protestant Reformation was challenging the authority of the Church, and many Catholics were abandoning their faith. In response to this crisis of belief, the Church came up with an unusual solution, one that would serve as both a spectacle and a reminder of its power: the creation of bejeweled skeletons.
These skeletons, which were discovered in the Roman catacombs, were originally the remains of early Christian martyrs, people who had died for their faith. The church decided to take these bones, clean them, reassemble them, and adorn them with precious jewels, gold, and silks, transforming them into macabre but lavish symbols of holy martyrdom. These saintly remains were then displayed publicly as relics, and their presence was considered a sign of the Church's connection to the divine. Pilgrims traveled from all corners of Europe to see these bejeweled skeletons, believing that just being in their presence could bring them closer to God and guarantee miracles. The creation and display of these relics raised questions about the true nature of the Church's motivations. Some argue that these skeletons were meant to inspire awe and reverence among the faithful. However, others suggest that it was more about reasserting the Church's authority and wealth during a time of crisis. The Church was, after all, under fire from critics who argued that it was too focused on worldly matters, like wealth and power, instead of spiritual guidance. In some cases, these skeletons were even paraded across Europe, with monks dedicated to transporting them from town to town. For many, the presence of a bejeweled skeleton was seen as a holy event. However, with the rise of the Enlightenment, skepticism about the authenticity of these relics grew. In some countries, even the Catholic Church began to distance itself from the practice, with Emperor Joseph II of Austria ordering the destruction of undocumented remains. Despite the controversy surrounding them, some bejeweled skeletons are still on display in churches across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The mystery of these strange relics is a reminder that the Church's influence extended far beyond religious matters, reaching into the realms of politics, culture, and superstition. The fact that these skeletons still exist today forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the ways in which institutions manipulate faith to maintain power. The 30 pieces of silver, a symbol of betrayal. The betrayal of Jesus by Judas Iscariot is one of the most infamous stories in Christian tradition. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas handed over his teacher and friend to the authorities, leading to Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion. This simple act of betrayal has been the subject of countless sermons, films, and books. Yet the fate of those 30 pieces of silver remains shrouded in mystery. The Bible tells us that after Judas realized the enormity of his mistake, he tried to return the silver to the priests. However, they refused to take it back, so Judas threw the coins in the temple before going to take his own life. The coins were then used to buy a field known as the Field of Blood, a burial ground for strangers. But the mystery does not end there. Over the centuries, the 30 pieces of silver have become more than just an object of betrayal. They have taken on a life of their own in the form of legends, curses, and quests. Many believe that the silver coins passed through the hands of kings and nobles, and that whoever possessed them would be plagued with bad luck and misfortune. Some even speculate that the Vatican has possession of the original 30 pieces of silver, hidden away in its vast treasury. If that is the case, then these coins are far more than just remnants of an ancient betrayal. They are physical symbols of one of the most painful and profound moments in Christian history. The question remains, where are the 30 pieces of silver today, and what power do they hold? The fate of these coins, whether they were lost, hidden, or still exist, raises important questions about the relationship between faith, power, and material wealth. If the Vatican does indeed possess these coins, what does that say about the Church's continued connection to the events of the past? And more importantly, how do these objects influence our understanding of betrayal, redemption, and the cost of human choices? The 6th and 7th books of Moses, forbidden magic. The story of Moses is one of divine inspiration, but could it be that Moses also left behind another legacy, one that was not meant to be part of the Bible? According to occult traditions, Moses authored 2 additional books, the 6th and 7th books, that contain powerful magical knowledge. These books, which were not included in the official canon of Scripture, are said to contain rituals, spells, and instructions for invoking supernatural forces. The knowledge contained within these books is believed to have been passed down through secret societies and occultists, who considered them to be tools for unlocking hidden powers. According to legend, the books were designed to help the reader summon angels, control the weather, heal the sick, and even communicate with the dead. The contents of these books have inspired generations of magicians and mystics who believe that the true power of Moses was not just in his leadership of the Israelites,
but in his ability to tap into a divine knowledge of the cosmos. The existence of these books raises several intriguing questions. Why were they excluded from the Bible? What made their content so dangerous or forbidden? And why has the Vatican seemingly kept them hidden from the public eye? Some believe that the Vatican holds the original manuscripts in its secret archives, but whether or not that is true remains a mystery. What is even more intriguing is that these books were not only used by occultists, but also have been connected to some of the most powerful secret societies in history. In the 18th century, printed copies of the 6th and 7th books of Moses began circulating among occult circles, and they were believed to be one of the primary sources of magical knowledge. Despite the Vatican's efforts to suppress these books, their legacy continues to haunt us.
What does it mean that these ancient texts, full of spells and mystical knowledge,
are still regarded as dangerous? And what does that say about the power of knowledge itself and the lengths that institutions will go to in order to control it? The Holy Grail, a sacred object shrouded in myth. The Holy Grail is perhaps one of the most iconic and enduring symbols in Western culture. It has inspired countless legends, from the tales of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table to the modern stories of Indiana Jones and the Da Vinci Code.
But what exactly is the Holy Grail, and why has it captured the imagination of so many?
According to Christian tradition, the Holy Grail is the cup that Jesus used during the Last Supper. It is also believed to be the vessel that caught Jesus' blood during the crucifixion. Over the centuries, the Grail has become synonymous with divine power and eternal life. It is said that whoever possesses the Holy Grail will gain immortality, miraculous powers, and the favor of God, but the Grail's true nature has never been fully understood. Some believe it is a literal cup, a physical object with immense power. Others argue that the Grail is not a physical object at all, but a symbol of spiritual enlightenment, representing the pursuit of divine knowledge and truth.
The mystery of the Grail deepens when we consider its role in medieval history. During the Crusades, the Knights Templar, a secretive and powerful order of warrior monks, became closely associated with the Grail. Some even claim that the Templars were its protectors, tasked with safeguarding it from falling into the wrong hands.
What happened to the Grail after the fall of the Knights Templar? Is it possible that the Vatican knows more about the Grail than it has let on?
Some conspiracy theorists argue that the Church has been hiding the Grail all along, perhaps in its secret vaults, as part of a broader effort to maintain its control over both religious and secular power.
The mystery of the Holy Grail is not just about an ancient cup. It is about the search for meaning, immortality, and the divine. Whether real or symbolic, the Grail has captivated the hearts and minds of people for centuries, and it continues to be a symbol of humanity's deepest spiritual longings. The Veil of Veronica, a mysterious relic with healing powers. Among the most famous and controversial relics in Christianity, the Veil of Veronica stands out as both a symbol of compassion and an enduring mystery.
According to legend, during Jesus' final journey to Golgotha, as he carried the cross, a woman named Veronica stepped forward from the crowd and offered him her veil to wipe his face.
When she took it back, the image of Jesus' face had miraculously been imprinted upon the cloth.
This image, which some believe to be a divine representation of Jesus, became known as the Veil of Veronica.
But here's where the mystery deepens. The story of Veronica and her veil does not appear in the canonical Gospels of the New Testament. Instead, it has been passed down through apocryphal writings and oral tradition, becoming part of Christian lore. The legend of Veronica's veil is a tale of deep compassion, but it is also surrounded by uncertainty and confusion, especially when we consider the various veils that are said to exist today.
Several versions of the Veil of Veronica have been preserved in different churches.
The most famous one is said to be kept in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, where it is venerated by pilgrims who believe that simply seeing or touching the veil can bring them blessings and protection. Another version is displayed in the town of Menorah in Italy, where the cloth is known as the Holy Face. What is remarkable about these veils is that there are no visible signs of paint or dye, yet the image Jesus is perfectly clear. Modern scientists have been unable to explain how the image appeared on the fabric. Some suggest that the veil is a piece of ancient cloth that has somehow absorbed the image of Jesus through some divine or mysterious process. Others speculate that it might be a relic from the early Christian period, or even a piece of cloth connected to the legendary dandelion. Another relic associated with Christ's face. The very existence of these veils, each claiming to be the true veil of Veronica, raises fascinating questions about the authenticity and significance of religious relics. If these veils truly hold miraculous power, as believers claim, what does that say about the role of faith in physical objects? Are these relics a form of divine communication, or simply myths that have gained power over time through repetition and veneration? What is most intriguing is the possibility that the Vatican knows far more about these veils than it has ever shared with the public. Could the Church be hiding the true origins of the veil of Veronica? And why does the Vatican continue to protect these mysterious relics, ensuring they remain symbols of hope and healing for millions? The nails of the cross. Where are the real nails of Christ? Another iconic symbol of the Passion of Christ is the nails that were driven into Jesus' hands and feet during his crucifixion. These nails are among the most powerful and sacred relics in Christian tradition. But just like the Holy Grail or the Veil of Veronica, the story of the nails is steeped in mystery and speculation. In recent years, 2 ancient Roman nails were discovered in Israel, and experts have claimed that they may have come from the tomb of Caiaphas, the Jewish high priest who handed Jesus over to the Roman authorities. The discovery of these nails ignited a wave of excitement among archaeologists, historians, and religious scholars, who immediately began speculating on whether these could be the actual nails used to crucify Jesus. However, this discovery was met with skepticism. The nails' connection to Caiaphas' tomb has been disputed by Israeli archaeologists, who argue that there is not enough evidence to prove their authenticity. And while the tradition of searching for the true nails has existed for centuries, it raises an important question. How can we know for sure which nails, if any, are the ones that were used during the crucifixion? The search for these nails is part of a much larger quest for the true relics of Jesus. Throughout history, countless churches and shrines have claimed to possess nails from the crucifixion, each one reverently displayed as a piece of sacred history. Yet, just like the other relics we have discussed, there is little concrete evidence to prove their authenticity. What is it about these relics, these nails, that continues to captivate the imagination of so many? Why do they hold such profound meaning, even in the modern age, when we might be more inclined to dismiss them as mere artifacts of faith? Perhaps, as with the other mysterious relics, the power of these nails lies not in their material reality, but in what they symbolize: the suffering of Christ, the sacrifice for humanity's sins, and the enduring faith of millions. The question of whether these nails are authentic or not may never be fully answered, but one thing is clear. The search for these relics is not just about the physical objects themselves. It is about connecting with the divine, understanding the past, and finding meaning in the things that transcend time and space. The Spear of Destiny, the power to control fate. The Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance, has been the subject of fascination and myth for centuries. According to Christian tradition, the spear was used by the Roman soldier Longinus to pierce Jesus' side during the crucifixion, confirming that Jesus had died. The spear, therefore, holds immense symbolic power. It is not just a weapon, but a key to controlling fate itself. The legend of the Spear of Destiny takes on even greater significance when we consider the people who believed it could confer divine power. Throughout history, many rulers have sought possession of the spear, convinced that whoever held it could control the fate of the world. Constantine the Great, the first Christian emperor of Rome, is said to have possessed the spear, and he won numerous battles with it in his hands. Similarly, during the Middle Ages, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles IV was said to have kept the spear as a royal treasure, believing it would ensure his rule. In the 20th century, the Spear of Destiny became an obsession for Adolf Hitler, who believed that possessing the spear would grant him ultimate power over Europe and the world. In the aftermath of World War II, American soldiers discovered a spear hidden in a vault beneath the city of Nuremberg, Germany. Experts later determined that this spear, which is now housed in the Hofburg Museum in Vienna, was made centuries after Jesus' crucifixion, casting doubt on whether it could be the original Spear of Destiny. But despite the historical evidence, the legend endures. Some believe that the spear in Vienna is just one of many relics that have been created to serve the ambitions of kings and conquerors. Others argue that the Spear of Destiny is a physical object with mystical powers, one that is still hidden somewhere in the world, waiting to be discovered by the next ruler who will use its power to change history. The legend of the Spear of Destiny serves as a reminder of the enduring connection between faith, power, and history. What makes the spear so powerful is not necessarily its physical form, but the mythology that surrounds it, the belief that it holds the key to controlling destiny itself. And perhaps, just as with the other relics of the Vatican, the true power of the spear lies not in its material existence, but in the ideas, symbols, and ambitions that it inspires. The Holy Belt of the Virgin Mary, a sacred relic passed through time. Finally, we come to one of the most unique and cherished relics in Christian history, the Holy Belt of the Virgin Mary. According to legend, when Mary passed away, all of the apostles were brought to her bedside by angels, except for one Thomas. When Thomas finally arrived, Mary had already passed on. In his grief and doubt, he asked for a sign to strengthen his faith. In response, Mary appeared to him and handed him her belt, a tangible piece of her legacy and faith. The Holy Belt was believed to be a symbol of the connection between heaven and earth, a reminder of Mary's purity, faith, and devotion. Over the centuries, the Holy Belt has passed through many hands, and its story has become entwined with miracles and divine interventions. Today, the Holy Belt is kept in the Cathedral of Paola in Italy, where it is displayed only a few times each year, attracting thousands of pilgrims who come to see this revered relic. The belt is more than just an object. It represents a spiritual connection to the Virgin Mary, a symbol of faith that has endured through centuries. What is perhaps most remarkable about the Holy Belt is not just its miraculous power, but the way it has persisted through time, surviving centuries of turmoil, destruction, and conflict. It serves as a reminder that faith is not confined to abstract beliefs. It is also embodied in tangible objects that connect the divine with the everyday. The Vatican and the Nazi escape routes, a dark legacy. After World War II, Europe was left in chaos, with many Nazi war criminals facing prosecution for their role in the Holocaust and other atrocities. However, as many as 90% of these war criminals were able to escape from Europe, and a significant number of them found refuge in South America. This escape was made possible by a secret network known as the Rat Lines, a system of escape routes that helped Nazis flee Europe undetected. What makes this even more disturbing is the involvement of certain members of the Catholic clergy in this operation. One of the most controversial figures in this network was Bishop Alois Hudal, an Austrian priest and a high-ranking member of the Vatican. Hudal, known for his pro-Nazi sympathies, used his influence to help hundreds of Nazis escape, providing them with forged documents and new identities. With the help of his extensive connections in Rome, Hudal ensured that war criminals, including prominent Nazi officials, could evade justice and start new lives in places like Argentina and Brazil. The Vatican, as an institution, has long denied any direct involvement in the Rat Lines, but evidence suggests that certain individuals within the Church played a key role in facilitating the escapes. The use of refugee travel documents, issued by the International Red Cross, further complicated the situation. These documents allowed the Nazis to slip through the cracks of international law and escape accountability for their actions. The involvement of the Catholic Church in the Rat Lines raises difficult questions about the Vatican's role in post-war Europe. Why did certain high-ranking church officials protect war criminals? Was this a moral failure, or was it a more calculated political maneuver to preserve the Church's influence during a time of upheaval? To this day, the Vatican has never fully acknowledged its role in helping Nazis escape. What other dark secrets from this era remain hidden in the Vatican's archives, waiting to be revealed? The Bible code, a hidden message, or a statistical trick? For centuries, the Bible has been considered the most sacred text in Christianity, and for many, it is a guide to understanding the divine will. But in the late 20th century, a controversial theory emerged that shook the very foundation of biblical scholarship, the Bible code. According to Michael Drosnin's book, The Bible Code, hidden within the ancient Hebrew text of the Old Testament, is a series of codes that predict future events with eerie accuracy.
Drosnin claimed to have discovered a method of decoding the Bible through a technique called equidistant letter sequencing (ELS), in which one selects a letter at regular intervals from the text, reveal hidden words and phrases. Using this method, Drosnin and others believed they could predict major world events, such as the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and even the creation of the atomic bomb. The Bible code caused a sensation among many religious groups and conspiracy theorists, who saw it as proof of a divine plan hidden in the scriptures. However, skeptics argue that the method is nothing more than a statistical coincidence. Critics point out that the ELS technique can be applied to any long text, not just the Bible, and that similar predictions can be found in works like Moby Dick and other secular texts. Despite the criticism, the Bible code continues to captivate those who believe that the Bible holds a hidden supernatural message. If there truly is a code embedded within the scriptures, it would have profound implications for our understanding of the Bible and its divine origins. But the question remains, is the Bible code a divine revelation? Or is it simply the result of human imagination-seeking patterns where none exist? Perhaps the real mystery is not about the validity of the Bible code, but rather about the nature of belief itself. How do we interpret signs and symbols? And when does a coincidence become a prophecy, the Christ myth? Did Jesus ever really exist? One of the most debated and controversial questions in religious history is whether Jesus Christ, the central figure of Christianity, ever actually existed as a historical person. Some scholars have long proposed that Jesus was not a real individual, but rather a mythological construct, a composite figure created from the legends and stories of earlier gods and saviors. This theory, known as the Christ myth theory, posits that the stories of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection are simply recycled motifs from other ancient religions. In many pre-Christian traditions, gods like Osiris, Horus, and Mithras were said to have been born of virgins, died, and were resurrected stories that closely parallel the narrative of Jesus. One of the most prominent proponents of the Christ myth theory is Earl Doherty, a Canadian author and historian, who argues that Jesus was a purely mythical figure invented by early Christian writers to help legitimize the new faith. According to Doherty and others, the stories of Jesus' miraculous birth, his teachings, and his death on the cross were modeled after earlier pagan deities. The idea that Jesus might not have existed as a historical figure is shocking, especially to Christians who have accepted the story of Jesus as a foundational truth for centuries. But the Christ myth theory raises important questions about the origins of religious stories and the ways in which faith can shape history. While mainstream scholars overwhelmingly support the view that Jesus was a historical figure, the Christ myth theory has gained traction among certain circles, especially in the context of skepticism about religious doctrines. Could it be that the true story of Jesus is still hidden in the Vatican's secret archives? Is there evidence that could disprove the traditional Christian narrative? Or is this myth merely a product of our desire to explain the unexplained? The Scythians, a lost Gnostic sect with radical beliefs. Before Christianity became the dominant faith of the Roman Empire, there were many different sects and beliefs that competed for followers. One of the most fascinating and obscure of these early movements was the Scythian Gnostics, a group that held radically different views about the nature of God, creation, and salvation. The Scythians were a branch of the Gnostic tradition, which held that the material world was created by a lesser, malevolent god, often referred to as the Demiurge. According to their teachings, the true God was far beyond the physical world, and the goal of human life was to escape the prison of the material body and reunite with this higher, divine realm. What made the Scythians unique was their belief that the third son of Adam and Eve, Seth, was not just a historical figure, but the embodiment of divine wisdom. They saw Seth as the bearer of secret knowledge, gnosis, that could lead to spiritual liberation. To the Scythians, the act of eating the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden was not a sin, but the first act of defiance against the evil Demiurge, an act of spiritual enlightenment. The Scythians were eventually branded as heretics by the emerging Christian church, and their teachings were suppressed. The majority of their writings were destroyed, and the sect eventually faded into obscurity. However, their beliefs survived in the form of ancient Gnostic texts, some of which were rediscovered in the 20th century, such as the Nag Hammadi Library. The rediscovery of Scythian texts raises intriguing questions about early Christian beliefs and the diversity of religious thought during the formative years of the Church.
What if the early church was more open to alternative spiritual teachings than we have been led to believe? Could the suppression of Gnostic sects like the Sethians have been part of a larger effort to standardize Christian doctrine and eliminate competing ideas? The Sethians may be gone, but their radical beliefs continue to inspire those who question the mainstream narrative of Christianity. Their story serves as a reminder that the history of religion is not a monolithic tale, but one filled with competing ideas, controversies, and hidden wisdom.
Women as priests, a forgotten chapter of early Christianity. For centuries, the Catholic Church has upheld the tradition that only men can serve as priests. The doctrine has been fiercely defended, with the Vatican emphasizing the example set by Jesus and the apostles. However, there is compelling evidence that the early church may have been far more inclusive when it came to women and their roles in religious life. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence lies in the Priscilla catacombs in Rome, which date back to the 2nd century AD. These catacombs, which were used by early Christians for burial, contain vibrant frescoes depicting religious rites that suggest women were not only present at worship services but may have even served as priests. One of the most striking images is of a woman in priestly vestments, holding her arms out in the traditional gesture of a priest performing a mass. In addition, another chamber within the same catacombs, known as the Greek chapel, shows a group of women gathered around a table, engaged in what appears to be a religious rite. These images raise an important question. Did women in the earliest days of Christianity serve as spiritual leaders and officiate sacred ceremonies just as men did? The Catholic Church has long maintained that these depictions are purely symbolic and do not prove that women ever held official priestly roles. However, scholars argue that these frescoes provide valuable insight into the early Christian community, suggesting that the role of women in the Church may have been much more prominent than is typically acknowledged. If women were indeed priests in the early church, what does that say about the evolution of the Church's teachings on gender and power? Could it be that the Vatican's decision to exclude women from the priesthood was a political one, designed to consolidate power and control over the growing Christian movement? The history of women in the early church is still largely untold. It is possible that the Vatican, which holds immense historical records, knows far more about the roles of women in early Christianity than it has revealed. Could there be other hidden stories of powerful women who helped shape the Church's foundation, their contributions obscured by centuries of patriarchal control? The Letter of Mary, Queen of Scots, a desperate plea from a dethroned monarch. One of the most tragic and poignant documents hidden in the Vatican's archives is a letter written by Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1586. This letter was penned while Mary was imprisoned in England by her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, and it marks a heartbreaking moment in the life of a monarch who had once been one of the most powerful women in Europe. Mary had been imprisoned for nearly 20 years after being forced to abdicate her throne in Scotland. During her years of captivity, she had endured betrayal, isolation, and political intrigue, and her only hope for redemption lay with the Pope. In the letter, written in French, Mary urgently pleaded for forgiveness and salvation. She not only expressed her deep regret for her past mistakes, but also begged the Pope to intervene on her behalf, warning of the dangers posed by certain cardinals in Elizabeth's court. Despite Mary's desperate plea, the Pope never responded to her letter. Mary's hope for salvation was in vain, and in 1587, she was executed by Elizabeth for allegedly conspiring to assassinate the English queen. The letter is a powerful symbol of the desperation and human frailty of those who once held great power. But it also raises unsettling questions about the role the Vatican played in the politics of the time. Why did the Pope never respond to Mary's letter, despite her dire circumstances? Could the Vatican's silence have been a calculated move, one aimed at maintaining a delicate political balance between Protestant England and Catholic Scotland? Mary's letter is a testament to the political influence of the Vatican, but it also reflects the personal tragedies that unfolded behind closed doors. The Vatican's reluctance to intervene in the life of one of Europe's most famous queens suggests a complex and sometimes callous approach to politics, one that prioritizes institutional power over individual pleas for mercy. The Michelangelo extortion case, stolen artifacts, and Vatican secrets. The Vatican is not only home to centuries of religious and historical artifacts, but it is also the custodian of priceless works of art. One of the most famous artists associated with the Vatican is Michelangelo, whose masterpieces adorn the Sistine Chapel
and other parts of the Vatican. However, in 1997, a scandal erupted when two invaluable documents, directly connected to Michelangelo, were stolen from the Vatican's archives. These documents, one a letter written by Michelangelo himself, and the other, bearing his signature, were of immense historical and artistic value. What shocked the world, however, was the fact that the theft was kept hidden for nearly 2 decades. The Vatican only acknowledged the crime when an anonymous extortionist demanded a ransom of 100,000 euros for the return of the documents. The Vatican firmly refused to pay the ransom, stating that they would not negotiate with criminals. While this decision was understandable, it raised further questions about the Vatican's transparency and how it handles criminal activity within its walls. For nearly 20 years, the Vatican kept the theft a secret from the public. Why did the Vatican choose to keep such a major incident hidden for so long? What else is being kept in the shadows, away from the public eye? As of now, the 2 stolen documents have never been recovered, and the identity of the criminals remains unknown. The case highlights not only the value of the Vatican's priceless art and artifacts, but also the mysterious ways in which the Church deals with both public and private scandals. The loss of these documents was not just a crime against art, it was a crime against history itself. Conspiracy behind the crucifixion. Was Jesus really crucified? For over 2 millennia, Christians have been taught that Jesus' crucifixion was a brutal and tragic act of divine sacrifice. It is the cornerstone of Christian theology, the belief that Jesus died for the sins of humanity, offering redemption to all who believe in him. But what if the crucifixion was not, as it seems? What if it was part of a larger conspiracy, orchestrated by those in power to fulfill a hidden agenda? Some believe that the truth behind Jesus' crucifixion has been concealed for centuries, and that a secret document, hidden in the Vatican's archives, could reveal the shocking truth that Jesus did not actually die on the cross. Instead, some theorists claim that Jesus was taken down from the cross in a state of unconsciousness, saved by his disciples, and later resurrected in a purely physical sense. This theory would have profound implications for the entire foundation of Christianity. If Jesus did not die on the cross, then the doctrine of atonement, which is central to Christian belief, would be completely undermined. But why would the Church conceal such a truth? What does the Vatican stand to lose if this secret were ever revealed? The idea that the crucifixion was part of a larger conspiracy raises uncomfortable questions about the relationship between religion, power, and truth. Has the Church knowingly distorted the story of Jesus for its own benefit, creating a narrative that serves its political and theological interests? And if this theory is true, how much of Christian history has been built on a lie? The trial of Galileo, the battle between science and faith. In the 17th century, one of the greatest minds in history, Galileo Galilei, found himself in direct opposition to the Catholic Church, an institution that held immense power and influence over the lives of millions. Galileo, an Italian astronomer, physicist, and engineer, is now known as the father of modern science for his pioneering work in astronomy, mathematics, and the scientific method. But back in 1633, Galileo's support for the heliocentric theory, proposing that the Earth orbited the Sun, was considered heretical by the Church. At the time, the Catholic Church maintained that the Earth was the center of the universe, a belief rooted in ancient interpretations of the Bible. Galileo's findings, based on his telescopic observations, directly contradicted this geocentric model. He believed, based on scientific evidence, that the Sun was at the center of the solar system, with the Earth and other planets revolving around it. The Church saw Galileo's views as a direct challenge to its authority and the interpretation of Scripture. In 1633, Galileo was put on trial by the Roman Catholic Inquisition, where he was charged with heresy. Galileo was forced to recant his beliefs and was placed under house arrest for the remainder of his life. His revolutionary scientific ideas were suppressed, and the Church banned his works for over 200 years. It was not until 1992, nearly 360 years after Galileo's death, that the Vatican formally acknowledged its mistake in condemning him. This belated apology was a small step toward reconciling the Church's history with the advancements of science. But the damage had already been done. Galileo's trial serves as a symbol of the Church's long-standing resistance to scientific progress, choosing to defend its own interpretations rather than embrace the truth. The fact that the Vatican kept records of Galileo's trial hidden for so long raises important questions about its role in shaping history. How many other groundbreaking ideas have been suppressed by the Vatican? How often has the Church used its power to silence those who challenge its authority? Galileo's case serves as a reminder of the tension that has existed and still exists between science and faith, and the profound impact the Vatican's decisions have had on the world. The Silver Hammer, the final ritual of the Pope's passing. The death of a pope is a monumental event, one that marks the end of an era in the Catholic Church. But what happens when the Pope dies? How does the Vatican officially confirm that the Pope has passed away? The answer lies in a ritual that is both eerie and symbolic: the use of the silver hammer. When a pope dies, a cardinal known as the Camerlengo is responsible for confirming the death. This is not done with a simple medical examination. Instead, the Camerlengo taps the pope's forehead with a small silver hammer 3 times to make sure that there is no response. If there is no sign of life, the pope's death is officially confirmed. This ritual, which has been practiced for centuries, is an eerie reminder of the power the Vatican holds over the fate of the Church. Once the Pope's death is confirmed, another solemn ritual follows: the destruction of the Pope's papal ring. The Camerlengo uses the same silver hammer to smash the papal ring, symbolizing the end of the deceased Pope's reign and marking the transition to a new papacy. The ring is then replaced by a new one, signifying the beginning of a new era for the Church. This strange and mysterious ritual raises several questions. Why does the Vatican still use such an old and somewhat macabre method of confirming a pope's death? What does this ritual say about the Catholic Church's deep connection to tradition and the symbolism of power? Is it merely a cultural custom, or does it represent something deeper about the Vatican's authority? While the silver hammer and the papal ring may seem like minor details, they are symbols of the immense power the Vatican wields. The ritual's secrecy and the dramatic nature of the process reflect the Church's need to maintain control over its most sacred institution. The fact that such rituals continue to be practiced today speaks to the enduring influence of tradition and the desire to hold on to power even in the face of change. The bejeweled skeletons, saints, or symbols of power. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the Catholic Church found itself at a crossroads. With the rise of Protestantism and the spread of secular ideas, the Vatican was faced with an increasing loss of power and influence. In response, the Church sought ways to reassert its dominance and restore faith among the people. One of the most bizarre and controversial methods it used was the creation of bejeweled skeletons remains of early Christian martyrs that were cleaned, adorned with precious metals and jewels, and displayed as holy relics. These bejeweled skeletons were not simply displays of religious devotion. They were carefully crafted to remind the faithful of the Church's power and ability to protect the dead. The Church's involvement in this practice was not just about honoring martyrs. It was also about maintaining control over the spiritual and physical worlds. By displaying these lavishly adorned skeletons, the Vatican sought to create awe and reverence, reinforcing its authority over both life and death. The creation of these skeletons was not without controversy. Some critics argue that it was a cynical attempt to exploit the faithful, turning the remains of saints into commodities for profit. Others see it as a sign of the Church's deepening corruption during this period. Regardless of the interpretation, these bejeweled skeletons serve as a reminder of the Catholic Church's ability to manipulate religious symbols for its own purposes. But what happened to these skeletons? Today, many of them are preserved in churches across Europe, but their authenticity has been called into question. Were these remains truly those of martyrs, or were they simply anonymous bones dressed up for display? The mystery of the bejeweled skeletons speaks to the larger questions of faith, authenticity, and the role of the Church in shaping religious history. The 30 Pieces of Silver, a tangible link to betrayal. The betrayal of Jesus by Judas Iscariot is one of the most iconic moments in Christian theology. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas handed over his friend and teacher to the authorities, leading to Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion. The 30 pieces of silver, though seemingly a small amount, have become one of the most enduring symbols of betrayal in human history. But where are these 30 pieces of silver today? What became of the coins that Judas received for his treacherous act? While many believe the coins were thrown away or lost to history, Others speculate that they may still be hidden in the vaults of the Vatican. Some even claim that the Church possesses one or more of these coins, using them as a symbol of the enduring legacy of betrayal. The mystery of the 30 pieces of silver raises several important questions. What is the true significance of these coins? In the context of Christian theology, why has the Vatican never fully addressed the question of their whereabouts? Are the 30 pieces of silver merely a symbol of betrayal, or do they hold a deeper, more powerful meaning? The story of the 30 pieces of silver speaks to the darker aspects of human nature and the consequences of betrayal. It forces us to confront the idea that even the most sacred events in history may be linked to darker forces. Whether the coins still exist or not, their symbolic power continues to haunt the Church and the faithful, a reminder of the price of treachery and the human struggle for redemption. The Jewish treasure in the Vatican's basement, the Menorah, and other relics. One of the most enduring mysteries of the Vatican concerns a treasure that has been lost to history for nearly 2 millennia. The Menorah, a 7-branched candelabrum that was used in the ancient Jewish temple in Jerusalem. The Menorah was one of the most sacred relics of the Jewish people, and it was looted by the Romans during the sack of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Following its capture, it was paraded through the streets of Rome and then hidden in the imperial archives. But what happened to the Menorah after that? Some believe that the relic was secretly hidden in the Vatican's vaults, where it has remained ever since. The Menorah's fate has been the subject of speculation for centuries, and rumors have circulated that the Vatican possesses it, possibly alongside other priceless treasures from the Jewish temple. The possibility that the Vatican holds one of the most sacred Jewish relics is both fascinating and troubling. What does it say about the relationship between the Catholic Church and Judaism? And what does it mean for the Jewish people, who have long sought the return of such artifacts? If the Menorah is indeed hidden in the Vatican, it raises important questions about the Church's role in controlling religious history, and whether it is holding on to artifacts that belong to another faith. The Vatican has never officially confirmed or denied possessing the Menorah, and it is possible that the truth will remain hidden forever. Yet the mere thought of this treasure, buried deep beneath the Vatican's walls, speaks to the ongoing power struggle over religious symbols, history, and legacy. The Holy Blood of Jesus, a mysterious theft in France. In a small town in northern France, an extraordinary theft occurred. A theft that involved a sacred relic, a vial said to contain the blood of Jesus Christ. The incident took place in an old church where a group of thieves broke in with the intent to steal gold and silver. However, upon finding a beautifully decorated golden box, they believed they had struck it rich, only to discover, upon opening it, that it contained not jewels or treasure, but a vial said to hold the blood of Jesus. Terrified by the sacred nature of the relic, the thieves reached out to a famous art theft investigator named Arthur Brand. The thieves, overwhelmed by fear, begged him to return the vial to the church without asking any questions. The relic was eventually returned, but the strange case left many people questioning the significance of such objects. Was the vial truly filled with Jesus' blood? Or was it simply a part of the rich lore surrounding Christian relics? This incident highlights the strange intersection between religious belief and material wealth. If such a relic truly exists, it would be a symbol of immense power. But what is the true value of an object like this? Is it sacred because of its physical nature, or because of what people believe it to represent? The theft and return of the vial of Jesus' blood raise troubling questions about the intersection of faith and crime, and the lengths people will go to in the name of religious devotion. Could the Vatican be hiding more relics like this? Items that could change the course of history if their authenticity were proven? The Church has long guarded its most sacred artifacts, and perhaps there are relics that could alter our understanding of Christianity if they were ever made public. The 6th and 7th books of Moses. Hidden knowledge and forbidden magic. In the annals of religious history, few texts have sparked as much intrigue and controversy as the so-called 6th and 7th books of Moses. These texts, which are believed to have been written by Moses himself, were never included in the Bible. Instead, they have been passed down through secretive channels, revered by mystics and occultists alike for their purported magical knowledge. The contents of these books are said to be filled with rituals and spells that can summon angels, control the elements, and even communicate with the dead. They are described as a guide to unlocking the hidden powers of the universe, a knowledge that was deemed too dangerous for the general public. The Vatican,
recognizing the power of these books,
has officially banned them, keeping their existence hidden from the world for centuries. While some scholars argue that the 6th and 7th books of Moses are nothing more than medieval forgeries, others believe they contain ancient, secret knowledge passed down from Moses himself.
These books have been associated with various occult movements, including alchemy, Kabbalah, and early modern witchcraft, and have been credited with influencing many aspects of Western esoteric traditions.
The Vatican's suppression of these books speaks to its desire to maintain control over religious knowledge and the spiritual practices of its followers. What makes these books so dangerous that
they were deemed forbidden? And why has the Vatican fought to keep them from the public eye for so long? The mystery of the 6th and 7th books of Moses continues to captivate those who believe
in hidden knowledge and the untapped potential of ancient mystical practices. The Vatican and Freemasonry, a tense and hostile relationship.
The relationship between the Catholic Church and Freemasonry has long been one of suspicion and hostility. The Church has repeatedly condemned Freemasonry, accusing the organization of being a threat to the faith and of harboring secret, anti-Christian ideologies. Despite this, many prominent figures throughout history, including some within the Church itself,
have been linked to Freemasonry. One of the most recent and controversial cases occurred in 2013 in a small village in the Alps, where Father Pascal Visson, a well-respected priest, was discovered to be a member of a Freemason lodge. This revelation caused an uproar, as Freemasonry has been officially banned by the Vatican for centuries. The Church immediately took action, stripping Father Visson of all his positions within the Church and ordering him to cease all pastoral work. This case reignited long-standing debates about the relationship between the Vatican and Freemasonry. Why does the Church view Freemasonry as such a threat? What is it about the secretive nature of the Freemasons that makes the Vatican so suspicious? And what role does Freemasonry play in shaping the power structures within Europe and the Western world? Some argue that Freemasonry and the Vatican are two sides of the same coin, two institutions that have long held competing visions of power, authority, and knowledge. While the Vatican maintains a monopoly on spiritual power, Freemasonry has sought to build a network of intellectual and political influence. This tension between the two forces has fueled a sense of rivalry and distrust that persists to this day. The case of Father Visson is just the tip of the iceberg. How many other priests and influential figures within the Church have been secretly affiliated with Freemasonry? And what secrets does the Vatican hold about the true nature of Freemasonry's influence within its walls? The canonization of Joan of Arc, a heroine transformed by the Church. Joan of Arc's story is one of the most tragic and inspiring in European history. In the 15th century, Joan, a young peasant girl from France, rose to prominence as a military leader, claiming to be guided by visions from saints. Her victories helped propel Charles VII to the French throne. But her fate took a dramatic turn when she was captured by the English and handed over to the Church. Joan was put on trial for heresy and witchcraft charges that were politically motivated, as she was a symbol of French resistance against English occupation. Despite her courage and unwavering faith, she was condemned by the Church and burned at the stake in 1431 at just 19 years old. For decades, Joan's name was tarnished, and she was dismissed as a heretic. But what happened next is nothing short of remarkable. 20 years after her death, the Church conducted a retrial and officially cleared her name. In 1920, nearly 500 years after her execution, Joan of Arc was canonized as a saint. Her canonization is a story of redemption, but it also reflects the deep contradictions within the Church. Joan was initially condemned by the very institution that later embraced her as a saint.
This raises questions about the Church's role in judging moral righteousness and political loyalty. What does it say about the Church's actions when a woman who was once burned alive as a heretic becomes one of its most revered saints?
Joan's story is not just about personal heroism. It also reflects the internal conflicts within the Church, where power, politics, and faith collide. It begs the question, how many other people, judged by the Church, were later vindicated, their names erased from history? The jar of manna, a sacred artifact of divine providence. In the Bible, there is a story of divine provision that has captivated believers for centuries. the story of the jar of manna. According to the book of Exodus, when the Israelites wandered in the desert after leaving Egypt, they were miraculously fed by manna, a heavenly food sent by God. The manna appeared each morning like dew, and the Israelites would gather it for sustenance.
But what makes the story even more intriguing is that Moses instructed his brother,
Aaron, to take a portion of the manna and place it in a golden jar, which was then kept inside the Ark of the Covenant as a reminder of God's miraculous provision.
The jar of manna is a significant relic, not only because of its connection to divine intervention, but also because it was meant to symbolize the Israelites' enduring faith in God's promises.
But over time, the jar vanished. No one knows where it went, and its disappearance has sparked many theories. Some believe that when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed,
the priests hid the jar of manna, along with the Ark of the Covenant,
keeping it safe from invaders. Others suggest that it was taken to Ethiopia, where it has been guarded by the ancient Church of Ethiopia for centuries. But what if the jar of manna is hidden in the Vatican? Given the Vatican's extensive collection of sacred relics, it is not outside the realm of possibility. The idea that the Vatican could possess
one of the most sacred relics of the Jewish people
raises deep theological and political questions. Why would the Vatican keep such a relic hidden? Does its potential existence within the Vatican hold power that could change our understanding of Christianity and Judaism? The mystery of the jar of manna speaks to the larger question of the Church's role in controlling and preserving sacred history. What does it mean for the faithful if the jar of manna and other such relics are kept in secret? Could the Church be hiding ancient artifacts that hold the keys to unlocking mysteries of the past? Or are these objects simply lost to time?
The Holy Grail, a relic of immortality and power.
The Holy Grail is perhaps the most famous and enduring symbol in Western religious and cultural traditions. It has been the subject of countless legends, novels, films, and quests, yet its true nature remains a profound mystery. According to Christian tradition, the Holy Grail is the cup that Jesus used during the Last Supper, the vessel that caught his blood during the crucifixion. The Grail, therefore, is believed to hold immense divine power, offering eternal life, miraculous healing, and divine favor to its possessor. But the Grail's story does not end with Jesus' crucifixion. In the medieval period, the Grail became entwined with the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table.
In these stories, the Grail was the ultimate treasure that knights sought to find, a symbol of purity and spiritual enlightenment. Over the centuries, many have claimed to have found the Holy Grail,
but its true location remains elusive. The mystery of the Holy Grail is deeply connected to the Vatican. Some believe that the Grail is hidden within the Vatican's vaults, protected by the Church and its secretive order of priests. The idea that the Vatican could possess such a powerful and sacred artifact has fueled numerous conspiracy theories. Why has the Church never acknowledged or revealed the Grail's existence? Could the Grail hold secrets about the divine that the Church is unwilling to share? The Holy Grail represents more than just an artifact. It is a symbol of humanity's deepest spiritual aspirations. Whether the Grail is real or mythological, it continues to inspire believers and
seekers, urging them to search for meaning, truth, and salvation. If the Vatican holds the Grail, what truths might it unlock about the nature of faith, power, and the divine?
The Veil of Veronica, a powerful symbol of faith and healing. The Veil of Veronica is one of the most revered relics in Christianity, and yet its origins remain shrouded in mystery.
According to tradition, Veronica was a woman who, moved by compassion, stepped forward during Jesus' journey to the cross and offered him her veil to wipe his face. When she took it back, an image of Jesus' face had miraculously appeared on the cloth. This image, known as the Holy Face, became a powerful symbol of Christ's suffering and compassion.
The Veil of Veronica has long been considered a relic of great spiritual significance, but its authenticity is often questioned. There are several veils that claim to be the true Veil of Veronica, each housed in different locations. The most famous is kept in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, while another is found in the town of Manopello in Italy, where it is known as the Holy Face. Both veils are believed to have miraculous properties, and pilgrims travel to see them in the hope of receiving blessings or healing. The Vatican has long kept the Veil of Veronica in its possession, and its importance to the Church cannot be overstated.
But the mystery surrounding the veil raises a question.
Why does the Vatican keep such a powerful relic hidden from the public? Is the veil a divine object of miraculous power, or is it simply another symbol manipulated by the Church to inspire faith? The veil of Veronica represents the connection between humanity and the divine, a reminder of Christ's compassion and sacrifice. Its mystery lies not only in its miraculous origins but also in the secrecy surrounding its preservation. What is the Vatican's true role in safeguarding such relics, and what does it reveal about the Church's understanding of faith, power, and divine intervention? The nails of the cross. Searching for the true relics of Christ. The nails used to crucify Jesus Christ are some of the most revered relics in Christianity, and they carry profound significance for believers. These nails, which were driven through Jesus' hands and feet during the crucifixion, are said to symbolize the immense suffering of Christ and the sacrifice he made for humanity's sins. But what happened to the nails? Are they still in existence today? Over the centuries, many churches have claimed to possess one or more of the nails from Christ's crucifixion. In 1990, a remarkable discovery was made in Israel when 2 ancient Roman nails were found near the tomb of Caiaphas, the high priest who had played a role in Jesus' trial. Some experts believe that these nails could be the very ones used in the crucifixion, but the evidence is far from conclusive. What makes the story of the nails particularly intriguing is the fact that their authenticity is continually debated. Are these nails truly connected to the crucifixion, or are they simply relics of another time, passed down through history as a symbol of faith? Some believe that the nails' power lies not in their material authenticity, but in the symbolism that represent the connection between Jesus' suffering and humanity's redemption. The Vatican has been at the center of the debate surrounding the nails, with rumors suggesting that it holds the true relics of Christ's crucifixion. If the nails are indeed hidden within the Vatican's vaults, what does that say about the Church's control over religious artifacts? The search for the true nails of the cross is not just about religious devotion. It is also about the power these objects hold over the faithful and their ability to shape the narrative of Christianity. The mystery of the nails speaks to the deep-seated human desire to connect with the divine through physical objects. Whether the nails are real or not, their legacy as sacred relics continues to inspire millions of Christians around the world. The Spear of Destiny, the Holy Lance, and its history of power. Among the relics most shrouded in legend and mystery is the Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance. According to Christian tradition, the lance was used by the Roman soldier Longinus, pierced the side of Jesus during his crucifixion, ensuring that he was dead. This act, which was part of the crucifixion, transformed the spear into a symbol of power, divinity, and control over fate. The Spear of Destiny has a long and storied history, and many figures throughout history have claimed possession of it. Constantine the Great, the first Christian Roman emperor, was said to have used the spear to secure his military victories. During the Middle Ages, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles IV kept the spear as a royal treasure, believing that it would grant him divine favor. Even Napoleon Bonaparte was obsessed with acquiring the lance, believing it would help him expand his empire. The mystery of the Spear of Destiny takes an even darker turn when we consider its possible connection to Adolf Hitler. Hitler is said to have believed that whoever possessed the spear would control the fate of the world, and he went to great lengths to obtain it. At the end of World War II, American soldiers discovered a spear hidden in a vault beneath the city of Nuremberg, Germany. Experts later determined that this spear was likely created centuries after Jesus' crucifixion. But the myth of the Holy Lance endures. Could the Spear of Destiny be hidden within the Vatican? The Church has long held power over religious relics, and the idea that such a potent symbol could reside within its walls raises questions about the true nature of the Vatican's influence. The Spear of Destiny represents the intersection of religious belief and political power, and its mystery continues to captivate historians, religious scholars, and conspiracy theorists alike. The Holy Belt of the Virgin Mary, a symbol of faith and spiritual legacy. One of the most revered and unique relics in Christianity is the Holy Belt of the Virgin Mary. According to tradition, after Mary's death, the apostles gathered to say their final goodbyes. However, the apostle Thomas was absent at the time of her passing. When he arrived, he asked for a sign to strengthen his faith. In response, Mary appeared to him and placed her belt into his
hands, offering a tangible connection between heaven and earth. The holy belt became a powerful symbol of Mary's purity and divine grace, and it has been passed down through the centuries as a revered relic. Today, the holy belt is kept in the Cathedral of Paola in Italy, where it is displayed only a few times a year, drawing pilgrims from all over the world. The sight of this relic is believed to bring blessings, healing, and spiritual renewal to those who venerate it. The significance of the holy belt is not just about its physical presence. It is a symbol of the deep faith and devotion that believers place in Mary as the Mother of Christ. For centuries, the Vatican has held many of Christianity's most sacred relics, and the holy belt is no exception. However, what is truly remarkable about this relic is not just its connection to the Virgin Mary, but the way it represents the relationship between the divine and humanity. The fact that the holy belt has been preserved for centuries suggests that the Vatican sees great importance in its role as a spiritual symbol. The Vatican's role in safeguarding such relics speaks to the institution's ongoing influence over the faithful and its ability to shape religious narratives. The Holy Belt, like many other relics, serves as a reminder of the Church's power to connect the earthly with the divine. The Apostolic Penitentiary, the Vatican's secret judicial body. The Apostolic Penitentiary is one of the most secretive and powerful institutions within the Vatican, and yet few people outside the Church know of its existence. This court, which has existed for over 800 years, is responsible for granting absolution for some of the most serious sins, once considered so severe that they are beyond the reach of regular church courts. The types of sins handled by the Apostolic Penitentiary include the desecration of the Eucharist, the breaking of the seal of confession, and serious sexual offenses by clergy members. These are the sins that the Vatican considers unforgivable, and they are dealt with in total secrecy. Only the Pope himself has the authority to grant absolution for these transgressions. For centuries, the work of the Apostolic Penitentiary was hidden from the public, and its records were sealed in the Vatican archives. In recent years, however, some of its cases have been revealed, shedding light on the dark and often heartbreaking nature of the sins it deals with. The secrecy surrounding the court raises troubling questions about accountability, transparency, and justice within the Church. Why has the Vatican kept the Apostolic Penitentiary so secret? What does it say about the Church's ability to handle its own scandals and corruption? And what other secrets are locked away in the Vatican's hidden vaults, waiting to be uncovered? The existence of this court, and its hidden cases, speaks to the Vatican's complex relationship with power, punishment, and forgiveness. The Nazi rat lines, the Vatican's role in Nazi escape routes. After World War II, as Europe was recovering from the devastation caused by the war, a shocking truth emerged. A significant number of Nazi war criminals managed to escape justice, fleeing to South America and other parts of the world. This mass escape was facilitated through a secret network known as the Rat Lines, which helped Nazis evade prosecution by providing them with fake identities, documents, and safe passage to places where they could live freely. The most startling aspect of the Rat Lines is the role played by certain figures within the Catholic Church, some of whom actively assisted in helping these war criminals escape. Bishop Alois Hudal, a high-ranking member of the Vatican, was one of the most prominent church figures involved in the Rat Lines. Hudal, who was sympathetic to the Nazi cause, used his position within the Vatican to help Nazis escape Europe after the war. He forged documents, provided refuge in monasteries, and created new identities for some of the most notorious war criminals, including those who had been involved in the Holocaust. The Vatican's involvement in the Rat Lines raises disturbing questions about the Church's moral and ethical stance during a critical time in history. Why did certain high-ranking members of the Church choose to protect war criminals, even after the atrocities they had committed were exposed? Was this a result of political motives, or was it a deeper, more troubling moral failure on the part of the Vatican? The Vatican has long denied any official involvement in the Rat Lines, but the historical evidence points to a dark chapter in the Church's history, one that continues to haunt its reputation. The question remains, how many other instances of moral compromise exist within the Vatican's vaults, hidden away from public scrutiny? The Christ myth theory, challenging the existence of Jesus. For centuries, the life and death of Jesus Christ have been at the center of Christian theology. His story is the cornerstone of Christian faith, and his teachings have shaped the lives of billions of people. But what if Jesus Christ was not a real historical figure?
What if the story of his life was created from a mix of earlier religious myths and traditions? The Christ myth theory posits that Jesus was not a historical person, but rather a fictional figure created by early Christian writers to explain the theological ideas that were taking shape in the ancient world. Proponents of this theory argue that the stories of Jesus' miraculous birth, his divine nature, his death, and resurrection are based on older myths and religious traditions from the ancient world, including those from Egypt, Greece, and Persia. This theory challenges not only the traditional understanding of the life of Jesus, but also the foundations of Christianity itself. If Jesus was not a historical figure, then what does that say about the Christian religion? What are the implications for the billions of people who follow Christianity, believing in the literal truth of Jesus' life and teachings? While mainstream historians and theologians reject the Christ myth theory, it continues to gain traction in certain academic and intellectual circles. Some argue that the Vatican, as the custodian of Christian history, may be hiding documents that could shed light on the true nature of Jesus. Could the Vatican possess evidence that could prove that Jesus was simply a mythical figure created by the early church to solidify its power? The Christ myth theory forces us to question everything we know about the origins of Christianity and the truth behind one of the most influential figures in history. Could the church's greatest secrets lie not in hidden relics, but in hidden historical truths? The Sethians, a Gnostic movement erased by history. Before the rise of Orthodox Christianity, there were many competing religious movements, some of which believed in radically different concepts of God, creation, and salvation. One of the most fascinating and obscure of these movements was the Sethian Gnostics, a sect that flourished in the early centuries of Christianity. The Sethians were a group of early Gnostics who believed that the third son of Adam and Eve, Seth, was the embodiment of divine wisdom. They rejected the material world, viewing it as a creation of a lesser, malevolent deity known as the Demiurge. For the Sethians, the true God existed beyond the physical world, and the goal of human life was to escape the prison of the material body and reunite with the divine realm. The Sethians were ultimately condemned as heretics by the emerging Christian church, and their teachings were suppressed. However, their beliefs lived on in the form of ancient Gnostic texts, many of which were rediscovered in the 20th century, such as the Nag Hammadi Library. These texts offer a glimpse into the diverse religious landscape of the early Christian world and challenge the idea that Christianity was a monolithic faith from the very beginning. The mystery of the Sethians raises important questions about the development of Christian doctrine. What if the early church was more open to alternative spiritual teachings than we have been led to believe? Could the suppression of Gnostic sects like the Sethians have been part of a larger effort to standardize Christian belief and eliminate competing ideas? The Sethians' story is one of intellectual and spiritual rebellion. Their beliefs, once considered heretical, offer a radically different vision of the divine and humanity's place in the cosmos. The fact that their teachings were erased from history by the church only adds to the allure of their hidden wisdom. Women as priests. The hidden history of female spiritual leaders. For much of Christian history, women have been excluded from holding positions of power within the church. The priesthood, in particular, has been strictly male-dominated, with the Vatican asserting that women are not permitted to serve as priests. But what if this exclusion was not always the case? What if women were once allowed to serve as priests in the early church? In the 2nd century AD, the Priscilla catacombs in Rome contained frescoes that depicted women performing priestly functions, including leading religious rites and ceremonies. These depictions suggest that women may have held significant spiritual roles in the earliest Christian communities. The Priscilla catacombs also show images of women wearing priestly garments, further suggesting that they were not only involved in religious life, but may have served as officiants in early Christian rituals. Despite this evidence, the Vatican maintains that there has never been an official female priesthood in Christianity, and the role of women in the church has been largely relegated to the margins. The exclusion of women from the priesthood remains one of the most controversial and divisive issues in the church today. Could it be that the Vatican, with its immense power over Christian history, has erased the stories of women who served as priests? What would it mean for the church if it were forced to acknowledge the role of women in early Christian leadership? The history of women in the church is a hidden chapter, one that challenges the traditional narrative of Christian authority and raises questions about gender, power, and faith. The Letter of Mary, Queen of Scots, a tragic appeal for mercy. Mary, Queen of Scots, was one of the most tragic figures in European history. After years of political intrigue, betrayal, and struggle for power, she was imprisoned by her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England. In 1586, while imprisoned in England, Mary wrote a letter to the Pope, pleading for forgiveness and asking for protection from the forces that were conspiring against her. Mary's letter is a heartbreaking plea from a woman who had once been a queen and was now at the mercy of political forces beyond her control. She begged the Pope to intervene, warning of the danger posed by certain cardinals who were working against her. But despite her desperate appeal, the Pope never replied, and Mary was ultimately executed for allegedly plotting to assassinate Elizabeth. Mary's letter is more than just a personal plea. It is a symbol of the complex relationship between the Catholic Church and the political powers of the time. Why did the Vatican remain silent in the face of Mary's plea? What does it say about the Church's priorities and its willingness to intervene in political matters? Mary's story is a reminder of the Church's deep entanglement in the politics of Europe and its role in shaping the course of history.